Did you ever wonder why we even bother with church at all? When I think about it, I think from a practical standpoint, that's a good question. Our relationship with Jesus is on a personal level, and yet we are called to worship corporately, to be accountable to those that God has called and appointed to positions of leadership, and at the same time to allow for the growth and the involvement of each individual believer in ministry. But do we have to do that at church? Well, if you understand church, then it is a gathering of people. It is not a building. It is not a ministry. It is not some sort of organization, even though it is to be conducted in an orderly fashion. So you could say that church is unnecessary, at least as we know it today. My name's Roy Clark. I'm pastor at Faith Bible Church in Temple, Texas. And I want to talk to you about the fact that not only is church extremely important to the Lord, but it is extremely important to each of us if it is done properly. Well, let's talk about Faith Bible for just a moment. Faith Bible grew out of a Bible study, and when we were discovering what we wanted to do next, the question was, why couldn't I just teach by broadcasting and everybody could tune in? Because we were getting like 600 people tune in. But after time of prayer and of reflection, it was clear to me in my heart and mind that was never God's intention for the church. It is not a spectator sport. It is in fact a sport where all of the participants, all the people that claim Christ, are intimately involved in. So I thought, as I had earlier done like a 5-year consideration of home church, I thought, well, why don't we just do a home church? Because if you look at the number of people originally attending Faith Bible, and actually on some Sundays a similar number, we could have done that in a living room. We could have done a home church. And through my study of home church, one of the things I realize is that it violates some of the most basic needs that Christ had of the church. The reason that he said, I created it and neither hell can prevail against it. Well, I believe that is true. I don't believe that the gates of hell can ever prevail against the church, but I am almost to the point of being able to say that the people that call themselves Christian can. Down through the years, we've created a lot of things, denominations and movements and a bunch of other stuff to try to create this thing that controls people and at the same time ministers to a need. But the question is, what need and whose need? Is it Christ's need? And is it done in a way that is pleasing to him? Well, I submit to you that in most churches today, especially here in America, it is done in order to please people and to feed the organization, the beast, I call it. Well, that's not God's intention, nor is that what he wants. Over the next few sessions, I'm going to deal with and hopefully make clear to you why church is being done the wrong way in America. Now, I have a great sympathy for home churches. I actually think that in some cases they're exactly what's needed. If we were a nation that was being constantly attacked for our faith, we might be driven underground, which that is what a home church is, an underground church. But God didn't really intend for the church to be hidden. As a matter of fact, Jesus says in Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, he says, let your light shine. Do not put a bushel basket over it. Don't hide off in the corner. Now, when you live in a nation like ours where so far you are still able to stand for Christ openly, even though you may find yourself rejected by many, you can still do it. But we are being silenced. We are being driven underground. I submit to you that if we do that, we are surrendering Christ's purpose for the church. If you read Matthew 28, it says we're to go, we're to make disciples, and we are to teach them all that Christ has commanded, but we don't. We think that it's okay to sit around and eat casseroles, to pull out the Bible and discuss it, even though we may not be able to really understand it. Well, you see, church is so that those that God has called to lead and has equipped to lead can do that. But there are some problems. So Faith Bible decided that it needed to be a visible church, not just hidden away in some little area. That if we were going to be what a church was, then we would have a public presence, and that public presence would be available to anyone who's interested. Now, quite honestly, if getting the building we're in is not the ideal building, and it's not in the ideal location, but it is what God made available to us, and it is something we could afford. And so what we have done is make the step that we believe Christ would have us make, and God has supported that by supplying. But we are simple on purpose. We try to have a public presence that operates on more a family format than a overly organized, overly whatever church. So when I was looking at that, I was bouncing between a home church that is in a public building, which is kind of what we are, and a church that is doing outreach and trying to involve more people in what we have to offer. What exactly is the right balance? Because you can go too far in either way. And the truth of the matter is that God has driven me to the fact to say, pattern yourself after the early church. Because what they were doing originally pleased me. And we have gradually evolved into something that I believe in most cases does not please God. That's a horrible place to be as a pastor. That's a horrible place to be as a Christian. So what we've done is pattern ourselves after the simplicity and the directness of the early church. There are some documents that we can use. There are some proofs for that in the book of Acts, as we can see in the ministry of Jesus Christ, which was both public and at the same time directed toward a particular group. Home church can't do that, and the organized religion doesn't do that. And so we find ourselves in a place where we're trying to do something that goes against the church culture, at the same time we believe is pleasing to God, and which some people approach and say, we want to make you into something like the organized religion they came out of, which will not happen. And when they find that out, they leave. We could have easily built larger numbers if we had just been willing to compromise. We are not. So here's the question. What are you looking for? If you're looking for a shared relationship with Jesus Christ, you can find that in a home church. If you're looking for that, you can find that in Faith Bible. If you're looking for that in organized religion, you may find it in a small cell group. Well, what does God want? Well, He does want us to have that intimate shared relationship with Christ and with one another. The Bible, the New Testament, is filled with one another statements. But there's something more for the church. You see, He wants the church to be a visible witness in a society, a witness that stands up for the things of God against those cultural norms that change generation after generation. They shift. And they're constantly shifting toward more of a satanic end than us becoming more pleasing to God. America is not becoming more pleasing to God. And I blame the church for that. I blame its leadership, and I blame the people in the pew who are not willing to step up. Instead, I'd rather pay somebody to try to do their Christianity for them. We are, in fact, not a biblical church. We are trying to do that. And over the next number of installments, I'm going to talk about why, how, and what we think is the best step forward. I want you to understand from the beginning that this isn't just about Faith Bible, though that is my main commitment. But it is more about the culture in America when it comes to Christianity. We need to change what we're doing because we have slipped from what was the beginning to what has now become somewhat worldly. Well, more than somewhat. So what do you say? What do you say? You want that? Or do you want to just walk away because you can't stomach organized religion, and you don't like the people in your house church, your home meeting? Folks, Christ said, "You will know because my people love one another." You will know by watching them. You will know by seeing them. We cannot hide, but we cannot keep doing what we're doing. I'm going to try to give you some reasons for that are both historical and biblical. And I'm going to try to share with you some of the things that I believe will help the impact that Christianity has on a world that is becoming particularly secular, particularly violent, and particularly divided, not only in our world, but also in our churches. That's one reason why our doctrinal statement doesn't include denominational dogma. We include the basics that define a Christian, somewhat like the old creeds, the ones in the New Testament and the ones that came after. What we want to know is, what does the Bible say? Are you willing to follow that? If you're not willing to follow that, then can you tell me why you shouldn't? My name's Roy Clark. The things I'm going to be dealing with over the next few weeks are heavy on my heart. As a man called by God to minister in the church and to minister to people, it breaks my heart when I see what is happening in our nation. But more than that, because even if the nation disappears, the church will remain. More than that, what I see happening amongst God's people. I hope you'll join in.